Hello everybody, welcome to the Q&A&Critique number 91. Oops, okay. The stage has started. Okay, so everybody, sorry about that little bit of a small hiccup. Okay, so now I'm connected. So this is my first Q&A in a couple of weeks since I was coming out of a little bit of a gastroenteritis, which is a food poisoning in the gut. Now I'm much better. But today is a Q&A&Critique number 91, and the topics of today are three. And the first things that we're going to take a look at is the official release for the Bforaritsts Splashscreen competition. So today we're going to be taking a look at the terms and conditions. What is the competition about? What are the requirements? What is the judging criteria? And what are the prizes? So I've talked with a couple of friends of mine. Two of them have been guests here before, or who have been talked about here before, which is Alan Watt and Iyad Ahmed. Both of them have been working on add-ons, and Alan has kindly shared his tradigilitist. I can't speak it very well, but let me just see if I can read it out loud. Give me a sec. Tradigitalist tool bag. There we go. So the first prize that we have today is the Tradigitalist tool bag. What a fiasco today. And today's tool bag is about, I'm going to invite some people to the stage to make this a little bit more dynamic if you'd like to come up and you have some questions. If not, why not? So I've created this website and I'd like to give you take a feature preview. So if you'd like to visit trinomedia.com, I'll share into the Q&A&Critique chat. You can go underneath events, check out the competition, or just scroll down. You should see the Splashscreen competition, where if you click on details, this will add us to the competition details. So this competition is an announcement where you create a splash screen with your favorite art in Bforaritsts or Blender, doesn't matter, to win a prize. The best splash screen will be picked for the next official release of Bforaritsts 3.6.0. You can work with any topic as long as you have a 16:9 format with room for the logo at the top left corner of the image and a small area to the bottom right to add an image credit. So the best originality and composition wins. And the first prize becomes a splash screen. Not only with a couple of add-ons and a couple of other things, you'll be featured in a software that gets up to 15,000 downloads per month. So there's a lot of exposure there. That's kind of nice. So let's say if you visit this website, let me just give you the proper link here, which is trinomedia.com/events/competition. You'll be able to read more about how to participate, add the event into the calendar. So what are the time frames? Well, the competition starts today, the 26th of May, 2023, and ends on the 16th of June, more or less 3 weeks. So it's a bit before Friday, around the same time as this Q&A, and be in part. You can also click on the Add to Calendar button, and you should be able to add it to your calendar. After that, well, the terms are originality, submission format, and software. So with originality, I guess all entries must be original work of yours, which means you can use third-party stuff or CCO things if you have the permissions, but plagiarism and copyrighted material or submission containing third-party assets without proper credit will result in disqualification. But at the end of the day, just to keep it clear, the image must be original and GPL compatible, but you don't need to share the source file. The submission format is basically a file a render rendered in HD 1920 by 1080, a 16:9 format in a JPEG or PNG format. Could be 8 bits or 16 bits, that's okay. You can render to a higher dimension, that's also okay. And I highly recommend it, but the minimum is HD 1080p or 1080. So along with the final submission, participants are recommended to also post development in the Discord channel, in the work in progress channel, the Discord server to show participation. A single wireframe or screenshot can do. So if you're in Discord, here, let's take a closer look. So if you're in Discord and you are inside the Bforaritsts server here, you can go inside the work in progress channel and post a screenshot of your work in progress. So there's a lot of good work happening there, so feel free. And as mentioned earlier, you can use any software to do the job, including Blender and Bforaritsts. But if you render in Bforaritsts, you get a 10% bonus for the qualification, since I'm going to be grading or qualifying the best piece based on a certain judgment criteria on 100% success rate. So if you use Bforaritsts, you get 10 points as a bonus, but you can use any other software as well, including things for texturing or sculpting or other supporting tasks. But the final render must be done within Blender or Bforaritsts, and you're good to go. Requirements. So there are 3 things that I'm generally looking for: lighting and composition, Creative Commons with the final render, and quality. The participants are recommended to pay close attention to lighting and composition to create a visually impressive and immersive image that draws the viewer in. Another thing that we're going to take a look at is participants do not need to share the source files of the render, but the final image must be licensed as a CCO or Creative Commons 0, meaning it is a global public image that anybody can use for anything. The reason being is that this image will be used in an open source GNU licensed software source, and it is distributed freely. It means anybody could modify it or use it. And I'm looking for quality. I want you to aspire to push your skills, your technique, your style, or your details, to strive for composition, and you want to show the best of the best. So it's your time to shine. If you could not make it to the Blender Splashscreen, or you've always wanted to be in a Blender Splashscreen but you weren't allowed to, well, this is your offshoot chance to be a Splashscreen in a software just like Blender. So here's a requirement of basically what the image format is. We have a logo to the top left. We have the art credit for you to the bottom right. And other than that, everything is free range. And you can build around that. So let's take a look at the judging criteria. So the judging criteria, each piece will be evaluated by a percentage system at the end of the day based on these 4 different types of criteria, where each accumulative point puts you to the lead. And the judge will be me to start with. I may ask some other people for some second opinions, but until then, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I don't have them appointed yet. You can always know more about what I'm doing there. And so let's take a look. You can have a maximum of 40 points for originality and creativity, which I'm seeking out a punchy and creative piece that has a fresh and innovative flair, including details, texture, balance, contrast, story, and composition. Story is a strong one. Aesthetics, which could get you another 30 points, appreciating the beauty and harmony of the visual elements and the overall impression of the work. So this is about design. This can include color, design, and intention. Next thing is 20% skill, evaluating mastery and proficiency in using the tools and techniques. And a Bforaritsts bonus of 10 points if you render in Bforaritsts. But how do you submit? There are 2 ways. You could submit by going into Discord, and I've created a new channel here in the top, a category for the competition with submissions. And in submissions, you can send your piece, and you can also publish your work in progress in the work in progress channel. Or you could send me the final image to my email at info@trinomedia.com. So you have those 2 methods. I will be keeping an eye on it until the end of the final submission date. And I will be competing myself to play with you, but I won't be voting with myself. So if there is nobody competing, I will default to me. But if you do compete, I'll be happy to let's play. Let's have some good times. And with that, the prizes. So the prizes in this case is we have a first place where you become the featured splash screen for Bforaritsts 3.6.0, which is coming out around June 21, including with Blender. We also have the Tradigitalist tool bag by Alan Watt, which is a Painterly NPR toolkit with more than 5 assets and add-ons in one. Let's take a closer look. So this add-on here, this includes a very popular and a beautiful Painterly technique done with geometry nodes, where it takes your render and turns it into paint strokes. It also adds in normal and a number of different effects. We also have a ability of his other Painterly effects that he has used with a canvas and other techniques, with original colors and Painterly colors by Andrew Zorn, Rembrandt, Vincent van Gogh, Leonardo da Vinci. He's created some LUTs to get some really nice colors. He's also developed a couple of other tools. In total, we have the Blender Live Paint Filter, which is the first one I mentioned, the Blender Illustration Shader, the second one, the Painter's Color Filter, which I mentioned earlier with the Paint LUTs or LUTs. We've got the Painterly Borders node, which is a good geometry node system for breaking up your edges of your meshes without too much effort. And the new and recently released Line Art Modifier. So the Line Art Modifier is actually a separate add-on, which I highly recommend checking it out, which just was released very recently. But it was basically an alternative to the Line Art Modifier or freestyle rendering from Grease Pencil and the post-processing in Blender, so that you can see these lines as curves inside the 3D space projector from camera. And this opens up many doors, many doors, because these are geometry nodes, and that means you can do many interesting things with them, including the infilling and other types of techniques and effects. So it's new, it's here, coming, and you can win all 5 of these in the first place. And on top of that, we take a look at we also have another add-on done by one of our core developers here, Iyad Ahmed, or CG on Fire, and he has also kindly given us a copy of his FX notes. So if you're into Substance Painter or Substance Designer, you'll be able to actually get a little bit more bang for your buck by using FX nodes. So FX nodes is a really cool add-on, which I've used a lot to help me do some procedural stuff, which gives me a bunch of add-ons, including a Voronoi distribution, triplanar coordinates, and radial symmetries, and polar cylindricals, and parallax mapping, halftone patterns, gradient wraps, flip booking, equitriangular mappings. We also have other utilities, and we also got some really cool noises and shapes and forms built inside a side panel for your node groups, and also into the add panel. So it works both with cycles and Eevee, and it adds a lot of nodes that you typically would use with Substance Designer, but now inside Blender. So this has a value of about $20, and you'll be getting this for free if you come in second place or first place. And the Tradigitalist tool bag, this one comes at a value of up to $60. It's right now at a discount. It's running at, well, mainly because I'm purchasing parity from Colombia. But its value overseas is around, for a commercial license, is $60. For an editorial license for non-revenue generation or hobbies, in other words, is about $20 also. So, pretty good steal. So get in store, get your art working, and this is the start of the competition. And on top of that, if you come into the second place and the third place, you also get 30 bonus points for the next competition, which means you start the next competition with a head start, meaning you've practically got one of the criteria already completed for your next competition, meaning you could become part of the next splash screen for the following release of Bforaritsts. So third place, this is what you get. You get a head start for the next competition and an honorable mention when I present the winners. So that's what I really wanted to share with you today. That's the first thing that's come out. And I would also like to invite anyone else who wants to come up online. Oh, please. Did I invite to speak? I think so. You raised your hand. So there we go. So if you have any questions, let's hear them. Let's start. Yeah, I'm kind of drunk. How are you? All right, so do you have any questions for about the competition? Nope. Okay, don't worry about it.
Hey Dreams, I think you muted yourself.
Am I muted? My microphone is fine on both sides. Maybe you cannot hear me at the moment. I can hear you.
Oh, I think you're muted, Dreams.
Technically, I'm working. Microphone is working. It would be seriously unfortunate if the live did not work. Oh, it would be seriously unfortunate. Okay, well, for those of you, if you have more questions, feel free to reach out. Hopefully my webpage that I quickly slammed together just this morning is clear and concise for you. And you can always contact me down below in the message box or here on Discord. I hope that works. Okay, Marty and White Rooster can hear me fine. Okay, that's good. Okay, so that's the first things that I wanted to show. So as I mentioned earlier about the project is that you do get 10 points for the benefit of using Bforaritsts. I wanted to show you and a walkthrough of why Bforaritsts were not Blender in this particular case. Yes, this is a bias. Yes, I'm speaking to the choir to some degrees. But I also wanted to test in live here with you and to help
Yeah.
you with some
Oh, dude.
tips.
I'm so dumb. I muted you so I could hear on YouTube, and I forgot to unmute. So that was totally on me.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so now you can hear me.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I had a question for you. Think you may have missed it. Was do you have any questions about the competition? Will you participate?
Oh, I will, and I got some questions,
Okay.
indeed. First things, are we allowed to participate as groups? For instance, can I team up with another artist to go for the splash screen competition?
Collaborations, yeah, I think so. As long as like at the moment I just mentioned one artist, but if you have two artist names, I think that's still valid. Or if you have a team name, that's perfectly valid too. Depends how you want to take the credit. I can only fit one credit at a time, but one way or another, I can maybe fit two names without a problem.
Okay. Oh, this is really exciting and scary at the same time.
Yeah, well, at least there are some good prizes. Hopefully, in the future for other splash screens, the prizes will become even bigger with more participants, hopefully. And hopefully, the dates as well within the next 2 to 3 weeks is a good amount of time. And hopefully, the terms are clear. But
To me, it's more about the honor of it. I'm from the '90s, so when I bought video games, we used to have boxes and like manuals and like physical documentation of the time while it changed, you know? Like when you had a favorite game, it would wear out with time, it would like tear, it would get wet, it would, things would happen. And a splash screen is like a cool rite of passage between software changes. Like, I was thinking of this when I opened Blender 4.0. I was like, dude, I started using it in 2.73, and it was like yesterday, and now we're on 4. Like, what's my niece gonna be using? Like,
Yeah, it's going to be a little tricky. So I guess to help you get started, today we're going to be taking a walkthrough some Blockout techniques with Bforaritsts. So I'm going to ask you, I'm kind of joking, do you know what is Blockout in general?
I have a vague idea. It's like the equivalent of like sketching in 2D, but in a 3D environment. Like for instance, when I went for an apartment scene, like I wanted a couch, so I just placed a cube where I knew I wanted to have a couch, and then I went through there, like not very detailed, not very mesh like, but just generally visually something.
That's right. Yeah, it's basically where you use blocks or different things to generate a quick idea. Quite right. Let's see what we can do with Blender, and let's see what we can do with Bforaritsts to do a quick blockout. So let's think of a quick idea. What would you like me to quickly block out? What's a good idea for me to start out with?
Hmm. Are we thinking about environment
Sure.
or indoors? I like the example of the cave that you made once, but just to challenge you, let's go for indoor apartment cozy.
Cozy indoor apartment.
Yeah.
Right, sounds good. Cozy is a really interesting word when you think about it. So, for example, cozy usually is a word that has a very broad definition, but there is a very interesting paper that was developed about cozy. White Rooster has suggested maybe a large city scene, which might be a bit too much to do in half an hour as a block out. Though it could be another idea to block that out as well. But let me just pull up this paper that I found about coziness. This is done by a Project Horseshoe Design think tank in 2017. So this paper defines what is coziness, which is a really interesting paper, and I read it through the whole way. Coziness is itself it refers to a strong fantasy of safety and abundance and softness. So this has a bias about game interactions, user experience, and design, but I think it applies for every cozy design really. So the key words is safety, abundance, and softness. So these are the things that we need to block out. A soft kind of beveled modeling technique and an abundance of like it feels full of something, abundance of light or abundance of warmth or abundance of blankets, and safety. It's protected. No danger. There's no sense of dirtiness or something else. So coziness is a very interesting science in itself, and I highly recommend reading this paper when you think about it. I added that into the links.
People are gonna think we scripted this.
No, I just have it partially prepared in my mind.
Oh, damn
Okay.
it. I was gonna ask you to block out a cave, but I already saw you doing that, so I wanted to challenge you, and then you bring out a paper out of nowhere. Come on, Dre's.
That's okay. Hopefully it's interesting.
Oh, it is. It is.
All right, let me just share the link inside of Twitch and not back there yet. YouTube. Give me 1 second. while I'm downloading Blender 4.0.
Oh, is that like a Blender version manager, like for Bforaritsts?
Um, it's for Blender. There is a fork or a version that tries to work with Bforaritsts, but it doesn't work yet. So it only gets Blender right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really good because you can download your daily experimental builds, daily builds, and your stable builds, and all have them in like one place and one easy way to launch whichever version by whichever date you need. I'm downloading the first 4.0.0 version that I know.
I don't know. I get a little bit emotional when I see those little numbers. Like, they mean the time passed, you know? You were doing some things when you were using Blender 3.5, you know? You had other relationships, you were physically at some place, which you probably doesn't have access anymore. I don't know, it's pretty interesting as a concept.
Yeah, and Blender also decided to jump the numbers.
Yeah, like screw 37.
Yeah, 37, 38, and 39. So let's just go to 40.
No
Why
need for
not?
that, no need for that. No need for that.
And code-wise, there's actually not a lot of changes, not a lot of feature changes yet. So the numbering is more of a publicity stunt than it is in a practical sense of development.
Don't blow my bubble, Dre's. Let me be happy.
Okay. So it's downloaded, we click on library, and we hit launch. So I'm going to do the same. I've got a development build here. And we're going to do a quick interface comparison between one and the other, just so that we know if we want to choose Blender or Bforaritsts to do the job. So if we immediately take a side-by-side comparison, let's take a quick look. They're pretty much identical. We have the outliner to the top right, we have the properties editor to the bottom right, we have the tool shelf on the left, we have the toolbars at the top, we have the tabs at the top as well, we got the splash screen which is almost identical, we got the timeline at the bottom, it's almost the same. If we take a look at, for example, the shading node, the shading workspace, we'll take a closer look at the shading workspace. It's almost the same. The viewports has more prior in Bforaritsts has more prevalence into the shaders. The image editor is included, so you can check out your textures, and everything's pretty much the same. If we take a look at geometry nodes here, which is just a simple nodes editor. So in geometry nodes, we almost have the same format. In this case, though, when the nodes editor, we can change it to compositor, change it to materials inside of Bforaritsts in the same. So we don't have shading, geometry, and compositing, 3 different workspaces. We can just use one. With that, we save a couple of workspaces. We take a look at the animation space.
Wait, 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 wait. They all do the same thing in one?
Pretty much, because when you're inside the nodes editor, in Bforaritsts, you have a quick toggle to
Ooh.
change your different types of editors when you need it. So you have the material editor, you have your geometry nodes, and then you have your compositor, all inside of the node system with these quick toggles. So you can save yourself a little bit of work there by switching around different workspaces or clicking on this panel, searching in this
Yeah.
menu, finding the correct editor, clicking in this panel, searching in the menu, finding the correct editor, and then go there again. That's the first key difference. But another key difference that we have is if we go inside the UV editing, for example, we're editing, say, or we're here in the layout. Create a cube, go into UV editing. We can see that we have some extra panels here on the right to help us quickly edit things. Same with the mesh normals, tools, separating, merge. All of these operators inside of Blender do not exist. So in Blender, in this case, if I want to quickly click on merge to center over and over again, and I don't want to press or learn the hotkey to do it, which would be Control M to merge at center, which is you press M, the menu loads up, you got to select something, and then it works. When you could just move the mouse and click to do the same thing. So in that case, it's one way to save a couple of clicks and not learn a hotkey. So this is a feature that comes with Bforaritsts and something else. So when it comes to layout, let's take a look at our main work interface. When it comes to layout in Blender, if I'm inside the camera, which is the hotkey 0, and I want to like move the camera, I would have to open up this panel here, go inside the view menu, then click on camera to view, lock camera to view, and then I can move the camera. And then if I want to move out of the camera and I'm inside the items view to move the cubes around and I want to do certain things, I'll have to go back to the view tab, back to the view lock panel, back to the camera to view panel and click on that to unlock. Go back into my 3D space. In Bforaritsts, if I'm inside my camera and I move into it, I have the lock built inside of the actual viewport widgets, so I can just quickly lock, move around, unclick, and then I'm got my free camera again with a single click. It doesn't matter where I am, or which add-on I'm using. And if I want to, I can also add the lock camera to view button and lock view rotation into the header. So up here in the top right, which would be here. And I can use this so that I can lock my view rotation while or not, and move it around, or hide all of the overlays, including the widgets. And I can still use these panels up here. Then go inside the camera. Where's the camera here? If I'm inside the camera, whoops, I got locked view. If I'm inside the camera, I can lock the view and I have control here, even though I'm seeing only the render with no widgets. I can turn it off and I can continue panning without moving the camera inside the 3D space without a problem. Go back inside the camera, and if I want to lock, I can stay here and I can, in this case, my camera is stuck, and no matter what I do, the view, I can move the camera, but I don't need to rotate. And this is built in. Inside of Blender, to lock your view, I don't know where that operator is, to be honest. Lock camera to view, lock camera to 3D cursor. Let's go inside the camera. And lock rotation is not even a feature, as far as I know. So that's something Blender has a little bit of difficulty with. Another thing is, okay, so now I'm inside Blender and I want to create some cubes. All right, so I'll go into the add menu, click on mesh, click on cube. Okay, that was relatively quick. Move it, and I think it was like shift. There we go. So shift, middle mouse, I can pan, and I need to add another cube, so I press shift A, and then I press another cube, and I can move that around. Okay, well, kind of works. And I'm in the circle select at the beginning, which is or I'm in tweak mode. There, I can use tweak mode. Okay, cool. So that's relatively working. I press G to move, G to move, G to move. Let me just throw up the hotkeys so we can see what's actually really going on. So it seems a little bit clunky, right? What happens if I want to add another cube, okay, or an icosphere to block this out? So let's add another icosphere, Shift A again, cube, scroll down and grab a cylinder, move it around. Okay, well, that's a little tricky. If I'm in Bforaritsts and I'm using this, then I can grab the concept of using the widgets here. Okay, so the default is I press cube and I've got a cube. I want a circle, I can hit the circle at the top here in this toolbar, I can hit the cylinder here, and I've already added everything that I've needed in a couple of seconds versus using the Shift A menu, grab a cube, Shift A menu, grab another cube, Shift A menu, grab a torus. I could just grab a torus, grab a cube, grab another torus, as many cubes as I need to start modeling things. Also, there is the hotkey to use this to cycle. Here is W to hit tweak mode. So if I'm in pressing G and I move and then I hit W, I go back in tweak mode and then I can move. In Bforaritsts, to do that, to go back inside the tweak mode, you just press D and whatever. And if you want to move something with the widget, you always press W, E, and R. The W, E, and R is the same as Maya, Max, Unreal Engine, Unity, and Cinema 4D and Houdini to set your transform widgets, and it works together, and you can see that they're changing in the interface. So there's an interface feedback to know which mode you're working in and which one you're moving around in. Another thing as well is that if I want to move this cube, I have to click on it to move it, or I have to change the manual move into the shift spacebar or the G button. But when I press G, it doesn't change the widget. When I press S, it scales it. I'm stuck in a scale mode. Click to confirm. Select the next object. I'm in the transform widget and I can't just like scale it anymore again unless I change the widget settings up here at the top to show all of the different types. Or I change the mode manually, or I press the hotkey S, R, or G. Bforaritsts, well, I have WER, but I also have the ability that if I select on something, I can click anywhere and I can move it. If I click on something else, I can click anywhere and I can move it. So I don't need to click on the object to get things moving. And I can select things as well. Box select. Inside of Blender, I have to press Control Lasso. That works the same, and I can continue moving. So that works the same. All right, what about navigation and viewport? So I want to focus on the torus here. In Blender, I would have to either go into the View menu and then Frame select it, or press the numpad button, which means I have to lift my thumb off the mouse, lift my hand off the mouse, or lift my left hand and move it all the way to the other side of the keyboard and press a small delete key to zoom into something. In most software, to do that, you just press F. F to focus. In Maya, in Max, in Unreal Engine, in Unity, in Cinema 4D, and Houdini, you press F. I think Houdini, I'm not sure. But you just press F to focus. Your index finger, it's on a common keyboard. And when you get lost, you press F. So what happens if I'm inside of Blender and I am very lost and I don't know where I am and I don't know where everything is, or I'm like far away and things are not working how I want? If I did the same in Bforaritsts or not, I can reset the view. So view, reset 3D view, and I'm back at the center of the world. This operator, I'm lost. How do I get back home? I'll have to lift my hand up, hit the numpad button, and zoom in. Or use the view menu and find the frame selected. And then I'm okay, but then I'll have to select something in the outliner. But there is no operator to reset your view, to reorientate yourself at all. That just doesn't exist. So you're lost. Okay, so that's in Bforaritsts and that's in Blender. What else do we have that helps you to start with the layout? So we're starting to scale things and we're starting to organize a space to kind of numpad, G to move in. Okay, I press G, I press again, I'm trying to get the correct axis. I press G again, I move down. I get the axis. I press S to scale. I press the middle button again to get the wall. I press G, move it to the side here. All right, need to go into the edit mode, so I'm going to hit tab. I'm going to go inside the view is not, it's in an arbitrary place at the moment. So Bforaritsts also focuses on defaults. So in this case, when I'm moving something and I'm using F to focus, I got the scale here. You can see that I don't have to press G or WER to move things all the time. I can work with the widgets. I can move at 2 axes at the same time without pressing a chain of hotkeys. And can I move it into the place and start working with the actual scale of different things. So to get to the same movement, and also when I rotate the view, it is rotating around my current selection. So in Blender, I would have to go inside my edit menu, preferences, go inside my navigation, turn on orbit around selection on, save the user preferences, and then I can continue working in a way where I would actually be able to focus on what I have selected and rotate around it and then zoom into it. Once again, lifting my hand up and continue work. Let's move it in. So I'll press G, middle mouse button. There we go. If I want to work in the same way as Blender, I can. And I can select something, go inside transform mode, and I can Control W, and it will work in the same way as Blender. I can press Control W, middle mouse button, and it'll work in the same way. So the system for moving in Blender is not the same, not different or lost. It's just a different hotkey slightly, but we use principally the standards from other software and work from that using the widgets mostly, and with visual feedback of what transform mode you're in, and then from there you carry on. So now that we got that sorted, we got the block out of this particular area. There are some other things that are slightly different, and this is where things start to deviate a lot. So this is in the edit mode. So in Blender, you can press Ctrl R to loop cut. And here, the loop cut is actually Alt C. And this is the old method where you like click and drag, and that's about it. Or if you want the legacy method, you can go here. I usually loop cut and slide. I can assign the hotkey by right-clicking on it, Control R, to be the same as Blender. If I'm in the Control R, in this case, let's just move out into here, Control R like this. I can now use the mouse wheel with the legacy system. That's a little change that I usually do. I highly recommend. So here's something else. So if I'm here and I created a loop and I created another few loops and I don't like some of these loops. All right, let's try delete them. So if I select, okay, let's go inside, not the wheel system. I want tweak, Alt click left, which is the same in Blender and Bforaritsts, it's the same to select loop. So if I select this loop, I press delete or X to delete, I have to choose, okay, what do I delete? Vertices? Nope, that's not it. So I delete the edges, gotta press delete again, select something, select the right thing, and then I delete. No, that wasn't right. All right, let's hit delete. I only want the edges and fade. I want to dissolve the edges, maybe? There we go. I got to dissolve the edges. What a journey. What an adventure. And here, I want to delete something. I can select the edge here and press delete. It's gone. Select the thing, press delete. It's gone. Select the face, press delete. It's gone. Select the vertice, press delete. It's gone. As most software do. So that's something that if you're doing quick block modeling and you need to do something, then you just work with it and press delete and it's gone. So, and that's another reason to think about. And after that, so we're working in Blockout and we got to think of what to do there. Any names? Have a great word, Hig. Ah, Stan, you're welcome. Glad you were here. Glad you joined. So other things we need to think about when it comes to block modeling is extrusion. It's basically when you select a face in point selection mode, which is 1, 2, and 3, is it in Blender? Or XCV?
Case 3, 2, 3, 3.
1, 2,
1, 2,
3.
3.
Yep, there we go. 1, 2, and 3. And Bforaritsts is XCV. That's basically the difference there. So if we am my camera, whoops, lock my camera down. It's like a cozy view like this. Something. Get another cube. We get a general idea there. All right, so once we're inside of, we got a general idea of what we're looking at in the world, and we want to start doing our values of where we want things to be or how we want things to be using the blocks with the blockout. Usually we typically work with lighting. So with Blender 3.5.0 and also Bforaritsts, you also have the ability to go inside of your camera, lock, camera to view, move it in. Another quick thing about the view navigation and things is that when you're hot in Bforaritsts to select and rotate the view, you just right click, and to pan is middle click, to zoom is middle, the wheel. That's about it. In Blender, you would have to memorize the middle click is a rotate, but is rotating not around the selection. You hold down shift, shift, right click is for the 3D cursor, but shift, middle click is to pan, and alt, middle click is to quickly swap around the views, and control, middle click is to zoom, or you could use the wheel, shift, middle click is to pan, and middle click by itself is to rotate. It's a bit, you have to juggle two hands to control the viewport. Before you only juggle one hand to control the viewport. About it.
Oh, by the way, it's especially bad for me because I have to use emulate the 3-button mouse because I only use like a tablet pen and my notebook. So I have to keep doing the juggling of Control Alt Shift, Control Alt Shift, Control Shift Alt. It's terrible.
Oh no. Does your pen tablet not do the middle mouse button?
Oh, it does, but it's kind of weird. It's like it's not very anatomically right. You know, you have to use it with your thumb like differently.
The thumb.
I'd rather use
Yeah.
the Control Shift, but it's interesting to be able to do it like with one shortcut instead.
Yeah, it's true. And the right click context menu is the same. As you can see, the Blender one is slightly different. Whoops. Oh, quick thing as well. In the pie menus in Blender Control tab, we have a pie menu, but if I want to change this hotkey, I would have to go into Edit, Preferences, Key Map, find the keybind for it, Control tab, and in this case I'm in the 3D view, Control Cycle Space Context. No, that's not it. I would have to search for it and then work it. In Blender and Bforaritsts, if I want to change the pie menu, I can go to the View, Pie Menus, and I have all of the pie menus that exist inside the software. I can right click and I can assign a hotkey. So Control Tab is here, and I can, if I want to see my other hotkeys, I can directly here in the View, Pie Menus. I can see which ones are assigned, which ones don't have, and which ones do I need, which ones do I want, which ones don't I want for the actual system. Another thing there. So now that we're in here, another thing that we need to start working on is quickly blocking out light. So if we turn on the camera compositor, here in the drop down arrow, rendering camera compositor, if I add a lighting, I can add another ability to show lights. I can start creating my light in the world, and inside of my compositing layout, visual effect compositing, I could use here to the top right, camera compositing, and I can go into my add shelf, and I can add a color, where is it? A converter, sorry, RGB to black and white. Your RGB to black and white, when I turn it on into the camera, basically says that if let's just mute it and change the color of this light into something like bright red. When I have this node turned on, it makes it just black and white, and I can also mute it as well. Wait. Group join, rename, and select. Weird. Oh, here it is. Toggle node mute. That's a hotkey that I think I should probably keep. So here is the red light to show the different types of values that I have for the different parts of the scene. But to use the RGB to black and white, I can use just the values of the hue and the saturation to help me light my scene. So using the viewport compositor, I can start to block out different parts of the scene with the different parts of light. So I can say, for example, here in the back, in the foreground, I could have something in the darkness, in the black. So I can make black like this, but in the middle ground, I could have something medium light here. Maybe up here in this part of the scene, I could create something that's very light, but I want it nice and soft. To start bringing in the light, using my values to help me block out the language or the light that I need. Get it smaller and bring out the strength of this light. I can focus on just the values before I focus on the actual idea of the actual color. So when I have my values nice and clear, maybe this is a bit too strong, I can drop this down.
Oh, wait. Bforaritsts works in lights with like temperature actually. Oh no, that's power.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. It's currently the scene settings are in metric at the moment. Inside of Blender, the blend default scene units are also in metric as well, so it should be the same. And there are other lots of little details, but for Blockout, quickly building a model, quickly building a mesh here, and getting your work there going helps you get your block out a little bit quicker than if you started doing it inside of Blend. But here's a quick tip. Another thing that I've noticed, like for example, I typically move objects in the 3D space in the X and Y axis. To do this, I usually typically go to my user preferences. I go inside my key map, go inside my 3D view global, and I add a new entry for my mouse, left mouse. I usually hold down Shift, and I use click drag. In this case, I'm going to use transform dot transform or translate. Transform is this case. And I'm going to constrain X and Y. The reason why I do this is that when I select this cube, I can hold down Shift and I can just move it in the 3D space without any like rotating of the view, and I can move this around, move this into the light or out of the light, and do the same. So when you use the transform.transform with click drag and then using your constraints, you can like move things in the Z axis only, the XY axis, you can make it be in global or local, or you can just work with your normal local space here. Now it's moving the XY of this particular object instead of the global, and it's super handy. And to set the cursor inside of Bforaritsts instead of Blender is usually Alt right click. If you're too tied to your Blender hotkeys, the other thing is you can also just scroll up in your user preferences and select your Blender hotkeys or import. If you're inside of Blender, you can go to user preferences, you can go to your hotkeys, hit export, save it to disk, and then import and load them inside of your software as well. The same thing goes with like if you need your add-ons in Blender, typically to go to your add-ons, you would do the same. You would go to, if we take a look at the Blender viewer, to get to my Blender add-ons, I would have to load up a new window inside of Windows. I'd have to write down the app data folder, which is %appdata%. Go inside the Blender Foundation folder, go into the Blender folder, and there I have my add-ons. Or if I was in Bforaritsts, I just click Edit, Open Preferences folder, and it immediately jumps to this folder. This works for Linux, this works for Mac, this works for all of your operating systems. And with that, I could move up a couple of folders, go inside the Blender Foundation, select all of my user data, which would be 4.0 with the scripts in the conflict folder, copy and paste inside of Bforaritsts without a problem, which means I can migrate my Blender settings and add-ons and everything that I use and preferences into Bforaritsts to use these toolbars to the top, the node add toolbars here on the left, the quick toggles of the different editors, and the ability to also control your cameras directly from your interface by locking and unlocking directly from the widgets, and also the tool shelf here on the left while using your Blender setup. With that, I didn't do a lot of layout, or I didn't do a lot of blockout, but I did give you a quick crash course, I guess you could say, of the key differences of the interface between Blender and Bforaritsts. Let's check our time.
One last thing.
Yes.
What if we don't talk about interface, but what about console?
About what?
When I use the console, for instance, when I want to render fast and I got a stupid deadline, I gotta render on console because it's a little bit faster. How would I do this with Bforaritsts? For instance, in my Blender, I have to keep the Blender on the desktop because if I use space on actually no, there's no way around it. I'm just anyways.
Just a
How would I
quick,
use the console with
just to
the
give you a
part?
quick answer in my scripts with my rendering. For example, my latest episode here. Let's see if I can zoom in. Which button is the zoom in mode? Yeah, hopefully you can see it from here. I use it to render headless. In Blender, I would just write Blender like this. And in Bforaritsts, you write Bforaritsts like that. And in the path here in the batch script, I write set path equals, and then in quotation marks, the path to the Blender installation that I'm using, or the Bforaritst
Oh, it's the
installation.
same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, but instead of using Blender, I just write Bforaritsts. And if I'm using Blender, I write Blender. So Blender space -b, which is to call the rendering system. Then I use another file name reference. In this case, I like to reference the same file for the different scenes. I use a reference which is the same as the app data, %, the reference name %, which means I set the file name at the top. But this is for another day. Hopefully you can screen capture this to get a general idea later.
It's true.
If not, I'll send you the file. There's no problem. But headless rendering gives you sometimes a 20% boost and also has the ability of loading as many Blender files as you need, as many scenes as you need to render as much as you need for whatever reason. It's really good for rendering animations and like very complex compositions, things like that.
And it prevents you from ruining your bake by moving the domain in the middle of the simulation because you're painting like crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And you can also right click, like once you're rendering this, put this into low priority and keep on working as well using the task manager. So, oh, today was fun. So, quick summary for those of you who are still here. Thank you, Plebes and Marty and White Rooster, for hanging out till the end. Thanks for everybody on Twitch and YouTube as well for paying attention and listening as well. Just wanted to say that I hope to see you guys compete in the Splashscreen competition, to be in store for the prizes, and if not, to even be part of a 15,000 download software per month with your credits and your art as the Splashscreen. And I also wish you an excellent weekend. I'll see you guys next week, same time, same place, now that I am alive again. See you next week with some extra tips and hopefully some more guides and work to help you get the job done. And I'll see you then. Have an excellent weekend.